Tonight, all backed up. The New Year's first winter storm clogs one of the nation's busiest traffic corridors, all while there's another COVID surge.
The high fevers came in waves. It can get bad.
Children now contracting the virus in record numbers, with the Omicron variant spreading after weeks of winter travel. And in the wake of America's chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan.
So we're starting to see some attacks, and that means we may very well see ISIS resurging around the world.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Starving, freezing, and stuck in a standstill. When will the misery let up? Good evening, and welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Well, the nation's capital transformed into a gridlock nightmare after Washington, D.C.'s largest snow since 2019. Some drivers trapped in freezing temperatures, get this, for more than 24 hours. CBN's Brody Carter joins us now with a closer look at the travel chaos. Brody, as I understand, the standstill started after a crash on what's one of the nation's busiest travel corridors.
John, Virginia Governor Ralph Northam says the State Department of Transportation is doing everything they can to distributing food and setting up warming shelters to help with this mess. But help for stranded drivers is taking an extraordinary amount of time. And while the National Guard is standing by, as of news time, they still have not been called in to help. Monday's mid-Atlantic snowstorm turned a 90-mile stretch of I-95 into a parking lot. A crash involving 6 tractor trailers left cars on both sides stranded as far as the eye can see, some for more than 24 hours. More than 500 crashes were reported in Virginia alone.
Visibility is extremely bad, and the road is absolutely snow-covered.
Social media is exploding with frustration from gridlock drivers, some desperately tweeting for medicine left at home. Others reported running out of food while rationing gas, many with children and pets trapped as well. Virginia Senator Tim Kaine tweeting that his office was working to fix the issue almost a day after the chaos started. At D.C.'s 3 major airports, half of all flights were delayed or canceled, and more than 3,000 flights were grounded nationwide.
I'm tired. I'm drained. I'm ready to go home.
Across the country, nearly 1 million homes and businesses left without power. Temperatures now plunging as much as 15 to 20 degrees below average in some parts. And 2 more rounds of snow could be on the way later this week. VDOT's infrastructure integrity is once again being called into question. Critics reminiscing the 2018 $11 million bribe scheme, where bids for snow removal work were renewed and rewarded to the highest cash bribes. VDOT maintains, however, the situation is unprecedented as they work to open up all lanes of traffic. John, back to you.
All right, CBN's Brody Carter. Thank you, Brody. Well, hospitals across the country overflowing with a record number of COVID cases, including children, all while the U.S. today breaking yet another pandemic high with more than 1 million cases overall on Monday. And as CBN's Tara Merchant reports, many of the victims considered too young to be vaccinated.
Vaccine boosters will likely start rolling out to even younger Americans now, since the FDA expanded emergency use authorization for Pfizer. The agency insists the benefits outweigh the risks.
It's more important now than ever for all teens to go out there and get all 3 of their vaccinations.
The agency authorizing Pfizer booster shots for 12 to 15-year-olds and urging everyone 12 and older originally vaccinated with Pfizer to get their booster after 5 months instead of 6.
We have patients in all age brackets with no medical history. The sickest of the sick that we are seeing now are the patients that are not vaccinated.
Pediatric cases are at an all-time high, with 325,000 more children testing positive in the last week. This as millions head back to school despite the surge of Omicron cases.
I'm just worried, really worried for my kid, because he has asthma and I have cancer. So, it's like a double whammy, because if he get it, I'm going to get it.
Children's hospitalizations are up 60% over the week before. 378 admitted last week, which the CDC says is a new pandemic record.
The high fevers came in waves. It can get bad. It's not just a simple cold for everybody.
I plead with parents to please seriously consider vaccinating your children, wearing masks in the school setting, doing test to stay approaches when children get infected.
Overall, more than 100,000 infected Americans are now in the hospital, more than double the total from early November. And scientists are now tracking a new variant out of southern France.
The nursing staff is tired. We are burnt out. We're working 12 to 14-hour shifts, and on some days up to 16-hour shifts. Breaks are minimal, and it's just that busy, and people are just that sick.
As for expanded eligibility for teens, approval could come as early as Wednesday when the advisory panel meets. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
All right. Thank you, CBN's Tara Mergener. Here with us now is CBN News medical reporter Lori Johnson. Lori, welcome and Happy New Year. Let's start with this. Conventional wisdom has said the danger to children from contracting COVID-19 was less severe. Now we're seeing record pediatric hospitalizations. Lori, can you explain the thinking now? Is this a cause for concern?
Well, Happy New Year to you, John, and to all the viewers. And to answer your question, doctors say the reason we're seeing so many more childhood cases is simply because of the Omicron variant, and it is so much more transmissible. That's the reason. And so parents should take some heart in knowing that still severe cases are very rare still among children, but 26% of all cases are now people under the age of 18, John.
Well, you talk about the high transmissibility of the Omicron variant. Talk about how that's affecting kids now that they're away from home from holiday vacation and back in school. What do we expect with that?
Well, it's a real concern, but we know that keeping kids away from school is just catastrophic. And we've seen the effects of it for coming up on 2 years now, where the mental health and even the academic health of these kids, we just need to do everything we can to keep them in school. And so billions of dollars have been spent to get these schools in shape, to get the ventilation systems working right, and to make schools safe. And many school districts, I know the one right where I am here in Tidewater, Virginia, just went back to using masks again. And of course, vaccinations for children over the age of 5 are recommended. So, the Omicron has definitely been spreading. President Biden today talked about one way to prevent children from getting Omicron or Delta, which is still very much in the picture, is for the adults around the children to be vaccinated.
It is hard to believe that we are heading into the third year of this pandemic. Lori, is it too early for vaccinated kids ages 12 to 15 to be getting a booster shot?
Yes, it is. So the FDA recommended it, and now the CDC has to sign off on it, but they could do that as early as this week. And as soon as they do, 12-year-olds and up can get that booster shot, and they're recommending it for people, kids, teens, and preteens who got their second shot 5 months ago, not 6 months ago, but now 5 months.
And as you just mentioned, Lori, the president announced today that the United States is doubling its order for Pfizer antiviral pills to 20 million. Is this a sign the administration is shifting its focus from preventative vaccines to treatment?
I think it's really just adding one more bullet to the arsenal that they have. The president talked about both things today, vaccines and the antiviral pill, which is really an absolute godsend. It really reduces the risk of severe disease by 90%, but there are some very big problems with it. The main one is it is in extremely short supply. Only 20 million is being ordered, and the president said today that it takes a long time to manufacture. So right now, only people who are the highest risk are going to be able to get these antiviral pills, if they are even available for those patients. And one other thing, these antiviral pills need to be taken ideally within the first 72 hours of the onset of symptoms. So regarding vaccines, though, the president was very strong about the need to get vaccinated. He pointed out that if you're unvaccinated or vaccinated, your chance of getting COVID is still very real. But if you are unvaccinated, those people are most likely to end up in the hospital or in the morgue, John.
Those antiviral pills, potentially a game changer. CBN medical reporter and host of Healthy Living, Lori Johnson. Thanks, Lori.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, the latest legal battle involving two of former President Trump's children. What investigators want to know from their cooperation. And welcome back. The legal fight between the Trump family and the former president's home state of New York is heating up. Lawyers for Donald Trump Jr. and daughter Ivanka Trump rejecting subpoenas from New York's Attorney General. The summons for the two issued over a civil investigation into whether the Trump Organization committed fraud. Eric Trump, the former president's middle son, has already been questioned in an inquiry over taxes involving the family organization and whether the values of Trump properties were manipulated for tax purposes. Well, time now for our Faith Nation panel. Joining us today, CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody and Nathan Gonzalez, editor and publisher of Inside Elections. Gentlemen, welcome to you both and Happy New Year. Let's start with this. The former president says there, according to that case, that this investigation is politically motivated. It comes after a multi-year fight to get a hold of Trump's tax records in a criminal investigation in New York City. I believe this went to the Supreme Court at least a couple of times. David, to you, is this more of the same?
Well, it feels a little bit more of the same. Also, let's remember, and I don't want to start dotting I's and crossing T's and connecting dots and everything, but look, there's been a lot of folks that want to see Donald Trump in a whole lot of legal trouble, and they figure the best way to do that is not just go after Trump, but go after his family. And so, this is just kind of a legal maneuver and a legal game here. And, ultimately, this is what it's been like for Trump and his family for a very long time. Now, a lot of people, a lot of critics will say, well, hold on for a second. They deserve a lot of the scrutiny, and that may be so. But the truth of the matter is that there's still a lot of folks still out to get Trump. And what I mean by that, I'm not talking about witch hunts or anything like that. I'm simply saying that there are a lot of folks that were very frustrated that Donald Trump became president of the United States for those 4 years. And now there are folks that want to not let him get away with anything at this point, and they're going to do everything in their power to somehow bring him and his family down.
Nathan, perhaps lost in this is what particularly is of interest, what can be gained from this organization, this investigation, rather. Your thoughts there?
Well, in part, I think David's right that various entities, whether at the state or federal level, are trying to look into whether the president or former president did anything wrong. I think that the tax returns have continued to be an issue, even going back to the 2016 campaign when then candidate Donald Trump declined to disclose his tax returns, and those continue to be of interest, as they're of interest to any candidates running for president, because knowing what financial interest that person has. And so, what ultimately comes out of it, we'll see if we get to the end. But I expect the Trump family or Trump organization to continue to not cooperate, because there really haven't been any consequences so far by playing that card.
We definitely have seen this long and dragged out. In just a couple of days, gentlemen, we're going to mark the one-year anniversary of the January 6th Capitol attack. Today, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer tied the insurrection to voting rights legislation, calling January 6th a symptom of broader illness that's now infected the modern Republican Party. Both of you, your thoughts, starting with you, Nathan.
Well, anytime you have a leader, a member of one party diagnosing another party, it never really goes well. I think January 6th, I think what we have to remember is that there has been, excuse me, an evolution on what happened in the immediate aftermath of the invasion of the Capitol when the politicians returned to Congress. There were leaders of the Republican Party, including Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell, who held the president at least somewhat responsible for not doing enough to stop it. Not that he started it, but not doing enough to stop it. But there's been an evolution in that now you have hardly no criticism of the president from the Republican side, and you have some Republican members of Congress going as far as defending some of the people that invaded the Capitol, going to the jail. And I know not every Republican member has done that, but there's been no criticism of those members. And so this has quickly devolved into a partisan issue, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, views or taints how you see what happened on January 6th. And I think it's disturbing, because what happened was extraordinary.
Yeah,
David,
I would agree. Yeah, sure. I think Nathan makes a lot of good points. Look, Nathan specifically talked about the political nature of all this, and that's exactly what this is. I mean, think about January 6th and what Chuck Schumer is saying here. He is tying a very important bill that Democrats want to get passed, the voting rights legislation, which they may change the filibuster rules on to do so, to January 6th. It doesn't really make too much sense. I mean, I guess it makes sense to a degree politically to say, hey, if we can make hay on January 6th to help with the voting rights bill, then we'll do that. But you're diluting the impact of what January 6th was all about if you're now going to make it political and tie it to voting rights legislation. I understand that some people might want to tie the two together, but I think that's a stretch, and especially on a day like January 6th, where there should be a lot more focus on many other things other than political.
Gentlemen, perhaps the bigger headline from Schumer today was a vow to change the Senate rules to push through election reform. This effectively might put the Build Back Better agenda of the president on the back burner. David, West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin says he does not support getting rid of the filibuster. He does seem open to discussions. Are there any other rule changes that he might endorse as one of the few remaining outliers in his caucus? We only have about a minute left, and we can't split the time between the two of you.
Yeah, sure, John. Hard to say. I mean, Manchin's been all over the place, especially on the Build Back Better. So the answer is I have no clue. I don't think Manchin knows right now. I mean, you know, he was first he was a yes on Build Back Better, then he was a no, then he was a maybe, then he was a no. Now he's back to a maybe. So I have no idea what Manchin is thinking at this point. I'll tell you this much. Everybody's talking about this filibuster change, but if Manchin's not for it, that's the end of that. And Sinema doesn't seem like she's for it, too. Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona.
Yeah, I think Democrats are going to have to go as far as they can on the voting rights bill. It doesn't look like it's going to get done. I think they're going to end up trying to do piecemeal either portions of the Build Back Better bill or portions of the voting rights bill, but they're not going to get these big, huge pieces of legislation done. They're just, the votes aren't there.
All right, you guys keeping us in the know. David Brody and Nathan Gonzalez, we appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. And we'll be back right after the break. Welcome back. In the wake of last year's disastrous pullout from Afghanistan, terrorists around the world felt emboldened. One place we've seen that is in Syria, where ISIS is gaining ground again for the first time in years. CBN contributor Chuck Holton traveled to the city of Raqqa and has this inside look at the terror network's comeback.
When ISIS seized control of much of Syria and Iraq in 2014, their stated goal was to create an Islamic caliphate that would dominate the entire region with their extremist ideology. It took nearly 5 years for world powers to retake that territory, and even to this day, the scars of war are everywhere in northern Syria, reminders of the brutality of that conflict. Mohammed Ahmed has seen it firsthand, having been shot 6 times while fighting ISIS as an Iraqi soldier.
You see this piece of metal, like pipe, and they cut it, and they weld it, and they make a small hole, and they put explosive stuff inside it, and they make a charger inside it, and with wire, and they bomb like armored or tanks or people, and these things make like huge explosion.
Walking around this abandoned village in northern Syria, it's easy to see how the millions of people who have fled this conflict and gone to other places like Europe and Turkey and even the United States probably are not going to want to come back anytime soon. The animals are gone, their homes are practically destroyed, the wells have dried up, and moving back to this area would be very, very difficult. So that just means that it's going to continue to be costly to the entire world as more and more people become wards of the United Nations, the World Food Program, and other organizations that have to end up feeding these people to help them survive.
Once the headquarters of the self-proclaimed ISIS caliphate, the city of Raqqa is still picking up the pieces after the terror group lost the city in 2017. But citizens say things are far better than before.
It's been more better for the last time because we have safety, the safety for all children. This is our city. We love her. We love our city. We can't leave our city.
When ISIS was in control, they never knew if they'd live to see another day.
Die everywhere, and the ashes of people everywhere. The horrible, horrible thing in every minute in Raqqa. We can't think of anything more than bread.
But threats remain. ISIS has begun taking ground for the first time since 2017 and making coordinated attacks against civilian and military targets.
This is the city of Kobani, and it saw some incredibly fierce fighting back in 2014, 2015 during a 5-month siege by ISIS. And the Kurdish forces eventually successfully drove them out. This was ISIS high watermark, but as you can see, there were some unbelievable battles here in that process. Now, ISIS is starting to reconstitute in Syria down south of here in a place called Deir ez-Zor. And so we're starting to see some attacks, and that means we may very well see ISIS resurging around the world in the months to come.
Here in northeast Syria, Kurdish fighters are staying vigilant, determined not to let ISIS repeat the horrors of 2014. But these developments are especially concerning as the U.S. looks to end combat operations in neighboring Iraq, leaving many in the region fearing a repeat of the disastrous pullout of Afghanistan last August. And citizens are hoping American foreign policy won't leave them on their own.
Something give you the hope. We looking to the hope. Right. Thank God. Now, a little hope, but it's good.
From Raqqa, northern Syria, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Thank you, Chuck. Coming up, having a winter blast. Washingtonians showing how they turned the national capital's first seasonal freeze into something that was a lot of fun. Let me explain. Finally tonight, we've all heard the saying, when life hands you lemons, you make lemonade. In D.C., locals had their own version, making the best out of a blizzard. Dozens of residents braved the cold to meet on the National Mall to face off in a massive snowball fight dubbed the Battle of OMICRON. The inclement weather forced federal offices and schools to close, nowhere near, though, enough to stop people from going outside. A nod to the Omicron variant, the Battle of OMICRON, an acknowledgement to the persevering spirit in the face of life's storms, both literal and figurative. Maybe, too, that you're never too old for a seasonal snowball fight. It looks like I missed out. Gabe did too, our producer. Well, thank you so much for watching and joining us for this edition of Faith Nation. We hope to see you again right back here tomorrow.